My first question is, how's your health?
My health's good. Every day's a gift. So, as you probably know, I had a near-death experience. And
yes, I am.
It has made me more grateful every day.
It does have a tendency to be humbling, I think.
I think the word I've heard is concentrating.
Yeah. You've now representing the far east Contra Costa County. What adjustments have your office been made to serve this area?
Well, first off, I've represented Far East County before in the legislature, so I'm not unfamiliar. And as you know, having been on the Board of Supervisors when this area was growing and much of it was in the county, I'm well familiar with East County. So one adjustment we did was because we moved out of the 80 corridor out of Richmond, the Redistricting Commission moved us east and south into Alameda. So we moved our Richmond district office to Antioch, to the community center where Jerry McNerney had an office before he retired, and he was redistricted out of this area.
How do you see the infrastructure and investment jobs bill affecting East Contra Costa?
Well, potentially significantly. Having been involved in transportation for multiple decades in the Bay Area, as East County grew, and East County, when I was on the County Board of Supervisors, Contra Costa was the fastest growing county in the state per capita, and much of that growth was happening in East County. So there's a lot of good things happening in this field. One in particular is teleworking. So if you can stay at home and get your work done 1 or 2 days a week, which seems to be the new model, rather than driving into the financial district or going down Vasco Road to get to Silicon Valley, to use the infrastructure funds to facilitate that, to do the oversight and the research to show how we can facilitate that for the right people so that the employer is getting their value, but the employees are able to spend more time with their family and their community. And lastly, that it works for the quality of life. So we've got a lot of people out here in East County who spend a lot of time commuting because this is where the affordable housing, and also impacts East County because you've got people who've gone further out into San Joaquin, again, and they have to pass through this area to get to work, to where the job centers are.
How long do you think it'll be before an E-BART line makes it all the way to Brentwood?
Well, you know, we were talking about this when we approved E-BART, you know, and now that's fully funded. And before COVID, it was overprescribed. I mean, more than the modeling showed that if you build it, they will use it. And the plan then was to come along the Cocoa line all the way out to Brentwood and have it hooked up eventually with a line from Livermore, so that, I mean, we should have done that. I would like to see this money to facilitate that, to specifically in this area. That's where the housing is.
What about Highway 4? It's kind of now expanded, but it's already overused.
Well, again, this is some of the upside and downside of having been elected office for a long time. We went from 4 lanes to 8 now. And we knew in the model of when we did that, when I was working with Ellen Tauscher, who represented this area in Congress then, and Tom Torlakson, when he was in the legislature and chaired the transportation committees prior to me doing it there, was we knew we had to do it because of the congestion, but we also showed that the modeling in relationship to the projected development, it was going to fill up what transportation people called induced demand. So all of those things are coming to fruition, and there's a gap here between when you get the transit and get enough people in the transit, and then using things like telework to help with the congestion. If we could take 5% of the people off of the peak trips on Highway 4, it would have an exponential improvement in congestion, much more than 5%, sort of the opposite of induced demand. You get those people to stay home, it helps. And you know, we worked for years when I was in local government, and we changed the law at the state level when I was chair of the labor committee to facilitate 4 work days. So just getting people to stay home, and it became very popular. So people would work 4 10s. The employer wouldn't have to pay the overtime as required by state statute, as long as they did 4 10s as opposed to 5 8s, and I think it was 8 plus something before you got time and a half. So we actually changed that in the labor code to facilitate that. a lot of that was driven by air quality demand.
One of the big issues that you've been championing for much of your career is mental health. Contra Costa has been one of the leading counties in developing a broad mental health program. Is there things that you can do to help that along?
Oh yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it's been a passion since my dad committed suicide in 1989, and we've learned so much about mental health and behavioral health in that time, about how the brain works, and so there's a lot of things. And I have to credit my predecessor, George Miller, and Cynthia Miller, his wife, who was on the Contra Costa Mental Health Commission with me many years ago. We've really had some wonderful, both elected officials, but public health officials, great people at the county health department. So just recently I got a $3 million grant for mental health rapid response in Central County, and we're expanding it countywide, where when you call emergency services, the dispatchers will be trained so that they'll dispatch 24 hours, 7 days a week, mental health responders, and the police will be backup for that, rather than having a police unit be the front. And the best advocates for this were the police departments. They want it because they don't want their officers going repeatedly to the same issues that are better trained, better handled by professionals who have master's degrees and sometimes doctorate degrees in mental health and behavioral health. So right now, as we speak, I'm very proud of the fact that there are people in Contra Costa responding to 911 calls and emergency calls in a way that very few places in the country and the world have. We're really a national model on this.
What's next for the Thurgood Marshall Regional Park?
Well, we were able to get $3 million for that, for the visitor center there. That's a partnership between the national parks and East Bay Regional Parks. We've got all that. That's all been dedicated. That part of the Concord Naval Weapons Station. The non-controversial part, which is over half of it, I believe, is in the East Bay Regional Parks. So we're developing the trail system. But a key part of that is the visitor center, which will be part of the National Park Service and a partnership with East Bay Regional Parks to tell the story about racism in the Bay Area and what happened at Port Chicago, and also how, as we've become more diverse, we've become more tolerant, but also better off. So that was exciting to get that. I have meetings this week and with both people in the Senate and with the White House to talk about exoneration for the Port Chicago 50, which I've introduced a bill
several times.
Yes, and George Miller did. And mostly it's for people to hear that story, because education's important when they hear about it. People in California tend to think, history is something that happened somewhere else. California has a remarkable history as well, and it's an important part of American history.
How long do you think it'll take for the Visitors Center to be actually up and operating?
My hope is in the next 5 years. The total cost to do all of the infrastructure there, if memory serves me, about $30 million. But that's a combination of local, so the East Bay Regional Park District, the City of Concord, the county, state funds and federal funds.
So a lot of strings.
Yeah, but it's actually happening, it's accelerating. And the infrastructure funds, the CHIPS fund for research, all those things we got passed in the last 2 years, the Inflation Reduction Act, which I call the Build Back Better Light, that President Biden was, there's hundreds of millions of dollars. Between those three bills, that's probably, I'm going to guess, over $2 trillion over the course of the next 10, 30 years. But all those things, and we're so good about that in Contra Costa County, is being smart about the color of money and where you get money from the local to state, from nonprofits. So all of those things, we're at the point now where East Bay Regional Parks is deep into the planning part, which is really the most consuming part. It's even longer than the actual capital construction. You got to have it done right in order to get the funding and then to pass the environmental laws.
Well, on behalf of the Brentwood Press, this is Chris Campos. Thank you very much, Congressman, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Ditto. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have a local newspaper.